Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Mayor and Board of Trustees. It is November 13th. Our first order of business, of course, is the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight we're going to be led by a fourth grade Gower West School student, Jenna Jason. Per her principal, Gina Rodewald, her favorite subject in school is social studies. Jenna is involved in gymnastics, Girl Scouts, softball, theater, beginner band, chorus, and knitting club. And sometimes she actually does some school studies. And she's also, she's traveled to California to visit family, to Mexico and to Greece. Lives, of course, with her parents, Mark and Dina Jason, and older sisters, Marina and Nikki. So, Jenna, would you come to the front and lead us in the pledge? Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Congratulations and thank you, Jenna. Not many people get to do that 2 days after the Veterans Day, so very special day. Karen, may I have roll call, please?
Trustee Francis.
Here.
Trustee Model.
Here.
Trustee Baveza. Trustee Martell. Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Skialka.
Here.
Mayor Stroud.
Here. Are there any residents who would like to address the board at this time?
They'd like my comments so we can have a technical presentation.
Okay, that'd be great. Any other residents like to address the board at this time? Okay. Next item is on the consent agenda. The consent agenda, all items are listed with an asterisk, are considered to be routine by the village board and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a board member or citizen so request, in which event the item will be removed. Under minutes, 5A, approval of a regular board meeting of October 23rd, 2017. B, approval of continued strategic planning workshop of November 1st, 2017. C, receive and file draft plan commission meeting of November 6th, 2017. Under ordinances, we have 6, let's see, D, that's to be removed.
Yes, we've had a request from the petitioner to remove item 6D.
Yeah, removed. Under E, approval of an ordinance granting variance as per the Burbridge Village Center PUD for approval of 2 signs exceeding 100 square feet in total area, S04 2017, located at 705 Village Center Drive, Hampton Social. Remove. F, approval of an ordinance granting variances as per the Burbridge sign ordinance to increase the amount of permitted signage to 418 square feet and to permit a wall sign in addition to existing ground signs on the lot of record at 7020 Kyline Road, SO8 2017, located at 7020 Kyline Road, Busey Bank. Under G, approval of an ordinance granting variances as per the Burbridge Village Center PUD to permit storefront signs outside of the established sign zone and use signs that are not individual letters attached directly to the building, SO9 2017, 808 Village Center Drive, Design Bar. Resolutions. 7A, adoption of resolution in support of Illinois bicentennial celebrations. B, adoption of resolution of appreciation recognizing retirement after 26 years of dedicated service to the village of Burr Ridge, Patrol Officer Daniel O'Connor. C, adoption of resolution supporting the village's Illinois Transportation Enhancement Program, ITEP grant application, the South Frontage Road Sidewalk Improvement Project. Considerations, we have 8C, approval of Plan Commission recommendation to approve a private sanitary sewer system for a new home, PCO 8 2017, located 6330 County Line Road. B, approval of recommendation to award contract for entryway sign for Public Works Administration Building. D, approval of recommendation to award contract for cleaning and janitorial services at village facilities. F, approval of recommendation to award contract for network storage expansion to increase storage and allow for additional capacity for village server and backup infrastructure. G, receive and file file resignation letter from Patrol Officer John Boris, effective November 6, 2017. Receive and file intent to retire letter from Patrol Officer Daniel O'Connor, effective November 15, 2017. I, approval of recommendation to hire 2 replacement patrol officers to fill vacancies created by the resignation of Officer John Boris and the retirement of Officer Daniel O'Connor. J, approval of vendor list in the amount of $700,860.88 for all funds, plus $464,493.05 for payroll, for a grand total of $1,165,353.93, which includes special expenditures of $19,265 to Kramer Tree Specialist for municipal brush removal in October 2017. $21,651.41 to Patrick Engineering for the 79th Street Alapo Engineering in November of 2017. $83,980 to Illinois Treasurer for the 79th Street resurfacing in October 2017. $16,916.54 to Illinois Treasurer for the German Church Road Sidewalk Project. $57,378.33 to U.S. Bank for interest due on the Police Department Debt Certificate 2017, and $59,987.32 to National Trek Services for the Workstation Upgrade Project in October 2017. That had to be the longest list of additions. May I have a motion to approve the following items in the consent agenda? 5A, B, and C, 6F and G, 7A, B, and C, consideration 8C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Pabeza?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
5-0.
Next, we have a special presentation to Janet Kowal and Lisa Moran for their receiving the Eternal Flame Award from COPS, which is concerns of police survivors. Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm here on behalf of Chief Madden, who's across the street at a Board of Fire and Police Commission meeting tonight. So we wish to share with you the recognition received from a very special employee of the village and a very special employee of a business of the village. To do that, I would like to bring up Sergeant Mike Barnes. Has been with the police department over 20 years and is very involved with the Illinois Concerns of Police Survivors. He's been involved with that organization since 2008, where he brought it to the village and to the police department, where we've offered our support since then. Since 2015, he's been a member of the Critical Incident Memorial Team, where he responds to departments in need of assistance with officer funerals and any assistance that families might need. And he'll explain what the Eternal Flame Award is and how our employees received it.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and trustees. I'm honored to be here tonight to stand before you to explain a little bit about Illinois COPS and the honors that were brought not only to Janet Kowal of the village, but also to CNH Industries and Lisa Moran last week down in Springfield, Illinois. The Illinois chapter Concerns of Police Survivors started in 2005, and the organization actually started nationwide in 1984. The goal and mission is to rebuild shattered lives, and that is to help surviving family members of officers that have been killed in line of duty start to rebuild their lives almost immediately upon the officer being killed. We go out and provide not just services as far as bringing in, matching up surviving siblings, spouses, parents. We match them up because obviously we can't understand as coworkers what a mom is going through or a dad is going through, but others can, so we bring them in. We then provide services for the rest of those surviving members' lives on a national basis where we offer retreats to them. We offer assistance in attending National Police Week in Washington, D.C., and also assistance in attending the services in Springfield that happen in May of every year, where the names of those officers are then affixed to the walls both here and in Washington, D.C. We are unfortunate to have a critical incident memorial team, as D.C. Loftus has explained. We started that in 2015, and our team goes out and handles all the funeral arrangements for the line of duty deaths for any officer that's killed in the line of duty. It has to be a line of duty death. Our team handles all the funeral arrangements and meets with the families immediately, bring in those other family members that are at least 2 years out from a line of duty death to assist those families. The team was just called up to Rockford this week, where we spent a week in Rockford taking care of the Cox family. Jamie Cox was murdered last Sunday morning, and our team responded immediately to that. And we represented, the Burr Ridge Police Department were represented up there all week, helping out with those funeral arrangements. We also do a ride across Illinois. It's called the Cycle Across Illinois, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you were able to see it firsthand this year when it came through Burr Ridge. This is the first time we've actually been able to make a stop here, but it was our 13th year, and this year we raised over $110,000 in 4 days, and that money stays here in Illinois to help those surviving family members. And we need a lot of support along the way for these different events that we do. And 3 years ago, Janet and CNH both stepped up on our 10-year anniversary and started helping provide food for us on the ride, getting CPA members in to assist set up a meal for over 100 people, which isn't easy to do when you have 100 people that have just ridden 120 miles on that particular day, which is our Saturday day. And then again, this past year in March, we were able to bring 208 members of law enforcement from across the country to Burr Ridge for 5 days. They stayed at our hotels, they ate at our restaurants, they shopped at our businesses, and that was done because I reached out to Janet because we had a waiting list of 150 officers. We were able to secure the Burr Ridge Park District, which would hold 100 officers. The national office called and let us know that they had a 150 officer waiting list. Janet reached out to some of her contacts with me, and we got on the phones, and in a matter of 3 days, we were able to bring in an additional 108 officers from across the country to attend this training. That was because CNH, again, opened their doors to us and contributed their entire building to us for those 5 days. And then when they found out that we were searching for a way to pay for breakfast for these officers, they agreed to pay for breakfast for all the officers. And then when they heard that we needed to buy lunch for them, they actually had lunch catered every day for us. So the in-kind donation from CNH was over $25,000 this year so that we could host those 208 police officers from across the country. And the national office was extremely overwhelmed with how well put together it was. And I can tell you that although I did a lot of work on it, Janet really pulled things together for us and brought things around from a village standpoint. She worked with all the businesses that she had direct contact with, not just to get food in there for us, but she was able to get Kirsten's Bakery to deliver Kringles to us for breaks. M&M Mars donated ice cream to us. She had Public Works help out delivering a freezer to us for that ice cream. So all in all, it was a really group effort, but Janet's the one that really helped me spearhead it. And so last week in Springfield, both CNH Industries and Janet were both awarded the Eternal Flame Award. That's only given out to one individual person, one business, and one agency a year. The Burr Ridge Police Department was fortunate to receive it in 2011 for our efforts and our ongoing efforts with them. You can only receive it once. However, Chief Madden again was awarded an honorary recognition for the Critical Incident Memorial Team last year with the other 3 agencies that spearhead that program. So we have one of these across the hall, and now the village has one because of Janet's efforts. I know Lisa Moran couldn't be here tonight from CNH, but they really jumped through a lot of hoops for us in a matter of 3 days to help out police officers from across the country. And that training program is called Traumas in Law Enforcement. And it teaches officers how to deal with traumas, not just for line of duty deaths, but any traumas and wellness in general. And I think that Janet deserves an enormous round of applause, as well as CNH for all their efforts in doing that. So.
Thank you. Last weekend, when Lisa and I were both receiving these awards, I can tell you that not only was it very humbling to receive the award, we were also very honored, knowing just how much good work that the Illinois Cops does for the families and all the survivors that are killed in the line of duty. And when you see those faces of the kids, the families, the spouses, and you know what they do to help them try to put their lives back together, and knowing that they do it all the time. As Sergeant Barnes had said just this past week, while we were in Springfield, there was an officer that was injured in Chesterfield, or Chester, I believe. So everybody's thinking about him. He pulled through fine. Well, lo and behold, the very next morning, 2 a.m., this officer in Rockford was shot, and out went the team. So there's never a break, but they're always there, and they will always continue to be there for the families. That's what's so important, and you see just the close-knit community that they've built with each other. It's just an honor to get to know them and be among them and know that you want to continue to help in whatever way you can. So, thank you.
That was a wonderful presentation, and Sergeant Michael Barnes is incredibly instrumental with the cops organization outside, not just at the traumas for law enforcement officers, but also the bike ride. And I don't know if anybody that does as much work as he does for cops, so you too should be recognized. And Janet, in her normal style, tried to deflect all the attention, which is phenomenal because it's a great organization. But Janet, we again owe you our deepest thanks and appreciation for all that you do in the village, even though you try to stay in the background. And today we got to put the spotlight on you. So let's give you another round of applause, please. Now we have I'd like to open it for public hearing for amendment to a Bluff Road annexation agreement.
Yes, the village board discussed this at a meeting in late September, I believe it was. This is an amendment to the Bluff Road PUD annexation agreement. Part of that annexation agreement focused on providing water, village water, to a property that was not contiguous to the corporate limits, but will be contiguous someday, and they wanted to access our water for this new office development. In exchange for agreeing to provide water to the property, the developer agreed to annex the property when it does become contiguous, and also to make improvements to Bluff Road and Jackson Street. The property is still not contiguous, so it still has not been annexed. It's our recommendation, the staff's recommendation, that we delay the improvement to the streets until such time that it's annexed, and that's what this amendment proposes to do, to extend the deadline to within 2 years of annexation or 2 years prior to the expiration of the annexation agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions regarding this amendment.
Any questions of the board? Any questions of the public here?
This is something that we've discussed before, and it's just basically, I consider routine maintenance. I'm making a motion, we approve the ordinance.
Close the public hearing.
Yeah, right. We'll close the public hearing first. All right, are there any residents that would like to address the board regarding this? Hearing no one, no other comments on the board, may I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it. Public meeting is officially closed. And what number is that? That's not
6A.
the right number.
6A.
Okay, there it is. There we go. Okay, thank you. Now we'll address the topic under 6A. Consideration of an ordinance authorizing Third Amendment to pre-annexation agreement to extend the deadline for completion of roadway improvements, Bluff Road, Waterfall Glen, Planned Development District, PDD. All right. Discussion? Motion to approve it?
Make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Second. Any discussion? There's a motion, a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
Trustee Morrow?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scapa?
Yes.
5-0.
Okay, B, consideration of an ordinance amending Article 2 and Article 3 of the Burbridge Building Ordinance to adopt a new permit extension fee table and establish a partial stop work order on new home construction.
Do you want to discuss B and C together? Is it related?
Sure. Consideration, C is consideration of an ordinance amending Chapter 38 of the Burbridge Municipal Code to amend and establish permitted hours for outdoor construction and maintenance work. Now, even though we're discussing them together, we can vote on them separately, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Right. And Evan Walter, Assistant to the Administrator, will present the background and update on these issues.
Of course. I have a PowerPoint on the bottom there as well. This one's a little bit shorter than last time. So. Thank you again, Mayor. Good evening to you. Good evening to the rest of the Board of Trustees as well as members of the public who are in attendance tonight. Again, before you tonight are items 6B and 6C. I'm going to be discussing them together, but as our village administrator mentioned, these are two separate items on the agenda this evening. These are amendments to the building ordinance as well as municipal code dealing with new home construction as well as outside construction and maintenance hours. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So the first proposed amendment that we discussed 2 weeks ago dealt with extension fees. If you'll recall, presently a new home permit in the village of Burr Ridge is good for 2 years. The first year being the just time that you are able to complete your project. Permit applicants are also currently permitted to have 4 90-day extensions that they can apply for and receive, provided that they are within good standing within their permit requirements, such as not having a stop work order, having no code violations open on their project. After the 2-year cycle, permit applicants are now required to apply to get a new permit, so they're effectively starting the process over. The proposed amendment that you see in front of you here would eliminate the 2-year cycle and allow them to permit them to apply for an unlimited number of 90-day extensions past the first year. The additional 90-day extensions that would take place after the second year, so beginning with the third year really of construction, would be equivalent to 100% of the permit fee. So just to clarify that figure, we have the permit fee within the village of Burr Ridge, and then there are additional fees that you need to pay to do other items to connect your house to our system, such as water tap-on fees, sewer fees, perhaps an engineering fee if that's required. This is just the basic permit fee. And so as we said, this fee would be equivalent to 100% of the original permit fee for every 90-day extension past that second year. That's our first amendment. The second amendment deals with exterior work orders, or exterior work and partial stop work orders. Let me skip ahead here. This would permit staff to issue a partial stop work order on the interior work of the house if the exterior work was not completed. So this is really meant as an incentive to have homeowners who are building new homes complete the exterior work of their house. If you've ever driven by a new house, you can tell that there is very much the presence of a construction site. You can see the visible presence of it, the safety gates that we have them put up. There might be trucks going in and out quite a bit during a construction site. There's audible noise. There's quite a bit of dust that's generated from these sites. So if under board's feedback, after 2 years of the footing inspection being scheduled, If the exterior work was not done, staff would be able to issue a stop work order simply on the interior work of their home. At this time, our code enforcement officer would go through the property, take some pictures of the inside of the house, and monitor it to make sure that no work was being done on the inside of the house. If it was found that work was being done on the inside of the house while a stop work order was issued on the interior, we'd issue a complete stop work order on the property, and they'd have to pay to remove that. Finally, we have our third amendment this evening. This has to do with outside construction and maintenance hours. Staff was directed to do research on this particular amendment by the board a few weeks ago. We returned some results that showed that we had no landscaping hours. By our account, we have not had any in the village of Burr Ridge. But under the recommendation of the board back to staff, the municipal code would be amended to have the construction hours added on Sundays and holidays be 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then the landscaping hours be established to mirror the construction hours. So again, that's 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. On Saturday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And Sundays and holidays being 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And just for the record, holidays are listed as New Year's Day, Memorial Day, Independence Day, Labor Day, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Day. So 6 holidays in total. This is what we found in neighboring communities' codes as to what they would list as holidays. Most did have a holiday reference. We were given, we had asked for time to have the public comment on these particular issues. On the first 2 amendments dealing with the 90-day extensions and the interior stop work order, we did not receive any public comment. On the third amendment dealing with outside construction and maintenance hours, we received a total of 5 total comments. I would classify 3 of them as being in favor of the proposed amendments generally, 2 being opposed. 4 of the emails that we received from the commenters were in your packet, and then we received a 5th who left me a voicemail one day, and there was just no way to really put that in the packet. Some of the complaints that we received generally had to do with simply the idea of hours being put in, specifically on the landscaping side. One person did reference that they were pleased that we were having some governance of the morning, but they felt that they were being cut off too early. But otherwise, the 3 who were in favor generally did not ask for any revisions to be made to the amendments at hand. The next steps. So right now, simply the ordinances are before you. If it is the board's will, they are prepared and ready to be drafted, or approved this evening. However, the option is also available to the board to make sure that we can continue this to another date for further discussion. So either option is available to you this evening. I'm here to answer any further questions that you might have or explain anything that I did not articulate clearly enough. Thank you.
What I would like to do is have them voted on separately, vote on the first one first, and then discuss the second one. Any objection to that?
No.
Any discussion on his first 2 amendments for Article 2 and Article 3 on 6B? Questions? Comments? Do I have a motion to approve 6B?
So moved.
Second, any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
5-0.
Okay, under 6C, we have open for discussion. I'd like to start with Trustee Scalpa.
Can you pull up? So, thank you. Construction and landscape, would this be concerning, would it apply to residents and commercial? So all landscaping is 10 to 4 on Sunday and holidays?
Meaning personal and commercial.
Right, so if I want to mow my lawn on Sunday, I got to do it between 10 and 4?
Sure. I don't believe we've really discussed that yet. It was not part of any staff recommendation to parse the 2 out. However, we can certainly discuss that if that's the board's prerogative.
That's all I have right now.
But just to clarify, the ordinance is written to be universal, correct?
Correct.
So you need to
Or
amend it.
all across the village, yes.
Trustee Snyder, any comments, questions yet?
We sent staff back out to review and check out the other villages. We had some comments from the last meeting. I'm okay with the amendment.
Al? Trustee Pezza?
Basically, what this proposal is talking about is outside construction and outside landscaping, not personal work on the house, on your garage, or personal landscaping, right?
We've worded the ordinance to be more outside maintenance. The purpose is really to make sure that noise is mitigated within certain times. So we've worded the ordinance to say outside maintenance because if you're making a lot of noise, at least under staff's thinking, if you were making a lot of noise hammering nails versus cutting your grass, noise tends to just be noise at 7 in the morning. So I think that discussion was held briefly at the previous board discussion. So we went ahead and made it a little bit more broad in the ordinance to say outside maintenance.
So that would be basically for outside and personal construction and landscaping, right?
That is correct.
I'll tell you, I don't have any problem with the landscaping, but I just almost believe that construction, since it's usually noisy, I wouldn't mind seeing that eliminated on Sundays.
Construction, just to be clear, construction is really the putting up of property. So if you wanted to build an addition on your home, that's what we're referring to by construction. If you wanted to replace a panel on a shed, that's really more maintenance. The two are defined the same way with ours. It's really kind of defining noise, as we said, very generally. Again, it was kind of staff's interpretation of the board feedback that we were trying to mitigate noise, not necessarily one type of activity or another.
Anything else?
Thank you. So thank you to the staff for preparing this. I know we did give you this direction. I think you've captured what we gave you, but I've been thinking about it as well, and thank you, Trustee Paveza, for raising that. I tend to agree with you that maybe we should revisit this and consider banning construction in general on Sunday. And, you know, the landscaping situation, again, I'd like to maybe think about it or hear from residents a bit more. You know, maybe are we able to break out residents versus a business for landscaping? Are we able to create two different and say, you know, that if I'm a resident mowing my own lawn from 10 to 4, that's fine, but if I'm a landscaping company, there's no landscaping noise allowed on Sunday? Are we able to legally make that distinction in the ordinance?
I think we can. You know, I think it.
If I may, I think the way it might be worded is work on your own property. The homeowner can work on their own property. So if I own a property, you know, and I'm cutting my own grass, maybe there's an exception for that versus somebody who is who I'm hiring to come work on it or something to that effect. But again, one thing to remember is that you know, we will have the police department monitoring this because this will be outside of the code enforcement's working hours. So that just may, it's not that it's not feasible. However, we have to remember that we have to enforce this practically. And again, we can do anything that really the board feels is necessary to improve the quality of life in the village, but just as a clarifier.
So I would defer to other trustees on the landscaping point there, but I feel, you know, that we should consider banning construction, and that I also feel that we should maybe kick this another meeting or two and try to make sure we've got adequate input from residents before we adopt this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, getting input from residents probably we have a qualifier, maybe more than 5 people, or it'd be better advertised, marketed.
Yeah, maybe only 5 people care about it, but maybe a lot more don't know about it yet. And I just want, before we do something that would really make it difficult in the village to do your work, or perhaps before we do something that would make a lot of people happy, I'd like to hear a little bit more and have those other options kind of considered. Thank you.
Trustee Francis?
Thank you. So as far as construction hours being restricted, I would support a ban on Sunday. When I built my home here in Burbridge, we worked Monday through Saturday, but we never worked on Sunday. We all needed a day of rest. So I would support, and I'm sure the neighbors needed a day of rest also from the noise and dust. I would support a ban construction on Sundays. As far as landscaping goes, now that's a different topic. In the summertime, I do my own landscaping maintenance at my home, cut the grass, trim the trees, rake the leaves, etc. In the summertime, when it's hot, I may not even start cutting lawn until 7 o'clock. Get out of the summer heat. I'm not going to do it at noon, I'm not going to do it at 5 p.m. I'm going to wait till it's cooled off. And my neighbors do the same thing. This would be really, if this were all-inclusive to landscaping contractors, landscape maintenance contractors, and residents and homeowners. You're very restrictive to the homeowners, I think. Okay with limiting on Saturday, on Sunday, 10 to 4, I think, or you can eliminate landscaping contractors on Sundays as well. I've got to support that. But residents like, we don't cut along, we need the freedom to be able to cut on Sundays. When the brush program first started in the village years back, it was, actually, brush pickup was later in October. It was around the week of Halloween. So I would purposely cut my brush on the Sunday before, the Monday, the first day of the Monday, because I wanted to minimize the impact that it had on my neighbors with brush sitting out there, and also the trick-or-treaters coming by the house. I don't want them to run in the brush pile. It's out by the street. It's out by the curb. And you don't want kids to get hurt. I put yellow tape around it, but I wanted to minimize the impact on the kids. So, out of habit, and I still do it, I trim my bushes, cut my trees on Sunday before the brush pickup. And yes, I do have a gas-powered chainsaw. Yes, it makes noise. But it certainly doesn't make the kind of noise that a professional landscape contractor does with 3 lawnmowers, 2 leaf blowers, and weed whacker. Big difference. So I would support all of this as long as it, for landscaping maintenance by the homeowner would not be restricted in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on the board yet? I would like to invite residents to address the topic of landscaping. Any residents who would like to address the board at this time?
Mark Toma, 7515 Drew Avenue. I have to agree. I think that it's a little too restrictive to the residents as far as doing general yard maintenance and whatnot on Sundays and or weekends. Some of us only have the weekends to work. And as far as the construction, I was getting a little confused with what we were calling construction and maintenance. So, you know, if I was going to be working on my house, let's say replacing a piece of siding or a piece of soffit or something like that, would I be restricted where I wouldn't be able to do that on a Sunday?
No, you wouldn't. Talk about commercial additions of buildings.
Okay, so it would be
Of a room or something require a permit. That's where we're trying to delineate or separate those two, where maintenance or home improvement projects like that would not be.
all right. Very good.
Anyone else?
Atlas 7309 South Giddings. We too do all of our own work in our yard, and of course it is important. Though we're retired now, we can do it during the course of the day, but there are times that you do wait for a cooler time during the day and you do it a little later. So I would feel that it's very necessary that we, the homeowners, are able to work in our homes and in our yards. Not with these hours, but the hours in which we need to do it. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Back to the board. Other discussions, comments, questions, motions?
If ban commercial construction on Sundays and holidays, and commercial landscaping on Sundays and holidays, and just have suggested work hours. Nothing where anybody would get fined for it, but for landscaping, let's say 10 to 5, or 6 or something like that, just as friendly reminder, you know, to be respectful of neighbors. But it wouldn't be necessarily in an ordinance where a resident can get potentially fined. Just suggested work hours on Sundays and holidays.
Kind of like the golden rule hours.
Yeah, golden rule hours.
Okay, it's not quite a motion yet, but let me, further discussion, or was that a motion? Or would it be leaving nothing for motion? Or is it?
I have a motion. Make a motion for residents, they can do what they want on Sundays. So that the commercial, I still think if it gets backed up and we have rain 7 days or 6 days in a row, 10 to 4, 12 to 4, something to be reasonable. If and other individuals who are not doing their own, let them get their work done at times. The construction, I'm okay with the ban with the rest. So I would make a motion, ban the construction. Residents can do the landscaping at their own time, cooler hours, whatever. But I don't mind personally, having a little commercial work done on Sundays. If it gets backed up, it's not fair to the other homeowners who maybe don't do their own service work.
Anything else? That was an official motion, so do we enter discussion or a second yet?
Summarize the motion again.
Sure. No construction Sundays, holidays. Residents are able to work on their own homes, or if you own your own property, their own landscaping. Commercial landscaping can be done at the suggested hours done by staff, because there is the portion of the weather that gets involved. I don't like to do my own landscaping.
You're saying commercial
No.
landscaping is allowed?
On Sundays for what staff came in. Construction out, commercial landscaping in.
Okay.
You're welcome.
There's a motion on the table. Any discussion before or second motions?
So what we're saying, just so I understand it, professional construction is not allowed on Sundays and holidays, but professional landscaping will be allowed on Sunday and holidays.
Yes. 10 and 4, what staff have recommended.
So this table, if I could try to make sure I understand it too, this table would be modified so that this 10 to 4 under construction would say prohibited.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it would be, this table would remain the same, except we would clarify that landscaping is restricted to contractors only.
Contractors or commercial, residents are not, residents are on their own.
Homeowners are not subject to either one of these
Correct.
tables for work.
So you're saying the residents, there is no time element on the residents?
As,
I can agree with that.
as Trustee Schiappa said, the golden rule, like I'm not gonna do it 10 o'clock at night, cut my grass.
On the other hand, there is a sensitivity as it is currently. We probably don't want, grass cutting done at 7 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Yeah, but that depends on, that's a golden rule, neighborly thing to do, if they shouldn't do, but it's not gonna be legally restricted.
So I'll second the motion. Have some more discussion about it.
Okay. Motion and a second. Further discussion? Do you want to start with it?
Yeah, I think we're in the right direction. I'd like to lay the vote, though, again, to get some more input on the direction that we're going. People feel strongly that they want to vote, we can do that, but I would like to, now that we've amended what we're proposing, allow, again, the village time to weigh in on that. Conversely, if you want to vote tonight on it, I suppose we can always come and revisit it again in the future if there's continued complaints or problems. So, but in general, I'd like to hear a little bit more comment on it.
I mean, not just tonight, but another night, but you'd be okay with it since you made the second?
I seconded it, so if you want to call the vote, Mr. Mayor, I understand, but I would think that now that we've got changed what we were proposing, we should allow a little bit more comment on it.
Trustee Schiappa, Trustee Francis, were you?
Yes. I support all elements of the motion. However, I would even go a little further and ban commercial landscaping on Sundays and holidays. With respect to the golden rule, there's a good neighbor rule out there, Trustee Scapper, and that's, be a good neighbor and don't start cutting your lawn at 6 in the morning or 10 o'clock at night or whatever. And that's pretty much all of us and all of our neighbors adhere to that. So that really won't be a problem, and it hasn't been a problem. But if you want, I would support eliminating commercial landscaping activities on Sundays and holidays, to go a step further from the motion that's on the floor currently. It'd be easier for staff and the police to enforce if it was consistent. Commercial construction and commercial landscaping banned on Sundays.
Well, in what trustee Model said, what we're talking about here, I don't think we're gonna get much input in the next 60 or 90 days, but come spring or summer,
Right.
that's when we're gonna get some. And I think what we could do is propose it now, and like you said, if there's a problem, we can revisit it in the spring, because that's when we're gonna pick up some. Right now, nobody's thinking about construction, landscaping, noise and stuff like that, but come spring, definitely, because even now, we've got several major construction projects in the wind, and that's when we're gonna hear about it. So I don't have a problem voting with the prospect of revisiting it in the spring, if it's necessary.
Any discussion? Further discussion over here for the two gentlemen that kind of almost like co-made the first motion? Any discussion or consideration of banning commercial landscaping also on Sunday?
I don't remember, is this a consideration? Is it a consideration now or a resolution?
It's an ordinance.
It's an ordinance.
Ordinance.
Oh,
You
so
can-
All this is available, all this is available to you to pass tonight.
Yeah, I'm okay either way. I mean, I see that nobody has landscaping banned on Sundays, commercial.
Did we clarify that?
No other community survey has a delineation between commercial and residential. These are the hours for noise generally.
So we could be a first then?
We could be a path breaker, yeah. Very special noise hours.
Very appropriate.
Yeah, well, there's a saying that I have, or I don't just have, but I'm kind of in the time management business, I call it activity management. The work expands the fill of time available. If it's not available on Sunday, they have to get it done Monday to Saturday. So, any other discussion? There's been a motion and a second. Well, any more discussion?
I can support the ban on commercial on Sundays. You know, I think they make up for it somewhere. You know, if there's rain, it's like garbage. Walls on a holiday, they make up for it. So, and these guys are professionals. They know how to where to make up for.
So are you amending your motion? Oh, no, sorry, you made the motion. You kind of made the motion, then you.
Trustee Francis amended it, so I don't know.
No, I did
not.
No, you did not.
Trustee
No.
Snyder made the
Discussion.
motion.
Discussion. Go ahead.
I still feel that for commercial, if you want to slight the hours even farther, that's fine. Weather does change things. At some point in time, you're going to have to get the work done. If you're going to back up a contractor so much, construction, I hear it. Landscaping, someone else doing the work, we all get busy. If I'm a homeowner, I want to do it, great. I don't want to do it. So I want someone else to do it. And I'd like my yard to look as good as Trustee Francis' home. So someone's going to have to do it. So leaving it on Sunday, all the other villages are 8 to 8, 9 to 8, 10 to 4. You want to back it up to 12 to 4, I'm fine. But I still think someone should be able to do the work if they wish.
Commercial landscape.
On commercial landscaping. Residents can do it at any time.
In that case, if I'm following Robert's rules correctly, you made a motion and there's a second, you can really amend the motion.
Correct.
That's correct? So we have to vote on this, and if we vote it down, then someone make a second motion.
Right, correct.
So, any other further discussion of the existing motion?
So trustee Snyder, if you're in favor of maybe further limiting commercial, maybe that would be a little bit of a compromise. I'm hearing a lot of support to limit commercial altogether on Sunday, but maybe if you wanted to amend your motion, I would support amending my second if you amended your motion to 12 to 4. I don't know if that would be a reasonable compromise or not. And again, as trustee Paveza said, we can revisit this again in the spring as well.
Personally.
What exactly did you just say?
I'm asking that perhaps you want to amend your motion to 12 to 4 on commercial to further limit it, but maybe not, you know, it's up to you.
You're suggesting to amend his motion from 10 to 4 to 12 to 4, but keeping commercial permission on Sunday.
Yeah, that's commercial 12 to 4, exactly.
And that's the one we'll vote on.
If he agrees to it.
If he agrees.
And I would go back to staff and say, is it really worth, you've heard our residents and with the other villages, would you like 12 to 4? Your staff, you did the work.
Sure, from what we've heard from the residents, you either basically don't like noise or you think that you should be able to make noise anytime within the permitted hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. There's really not been a middle ground there, honestly.
So it wasn't the 10 a.m., it wasn't the noon, it was no noise or noise.
Again, I think a lot of the yeses were in favor of more of a strict ban. They like the idea of not hearing noise on a certain day or before a certain time. Again, we heard very little feedback regarding the afternoon hours. Nobody complained about that, even the people who were objecting, really. But that's the feedback we received. Yes, we received 5 comments, so it wasn't an overwhelming amount of comment.
Mayor, I'd be happy to amend my motion to
12 to 4.
to 12 to 4.
Match Western Springs.
To match Western Springs, to make it to go along with trustee Mao.
Yeah. I'll amend my second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yeah, yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
5-0.
Motion passes 5-0.
Can you guys just repeat it now? What is the final?
You can never work on Sundays. You never can work on Sundays. No residents, just you.
Okay.
I'll summarize just because we'll revise the ordinance before it's signed, but the table that's on the screen was changed to number one, clarify that the hours apply only to commercial construction and landscaping contractors. And 2, the landscaping section, the Sunday holiday hours were revised to be 12 to 4. And again, all of these hours only applied to contractors, not to residents doing work on their own.
I'm sorry, are
properties.
you saying that you're, wait 1 second. Are you saying that motion allowed commercial construction on Sundays?
No.
No, it did not.
I just want to make sure of that. So that line 1 becomes prohibited on construction. Just on
Oh,
landscaping.
you're right. I said it wrong. Yeah, that line 1, that first
Yes.
construction 10 to 4, that becomes prohibited. Right.
Right. And so it's 12 to 4 commercial only, residents can do what they want.
Right.
And I'll let Evan work out the legal mumbo jumbo around this, you know. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, 6D was removed from the consent agenda. Resident would like to, your resident would address the board?
Yes, Evan can give you a little background first on the Plan Commission recommendation, and then the resident asked to be able to address the board.
Thank you, Village Administrator. So this is technically VO3 2017. It's a Plan Commission consideration. It's a request by the resident at 9 South 155 Madison Street. The resident requested variations from Section 4.j of the Burr Ridge zoning ordinance to permit a 6-foot tall fence in an interior side yard that is less than 50% open. That's 3 total variations. They made this request on the November 6th Plan Commission meeting. So the three variations are to permit a 6-foot tall fence. The 6-foot tall fence is a variation as we only permit 5 feet tall. The interior side yard is a variation because we do not permit fences in side yards, interior side yards. Fences are only permitted in rear yards behind the rear wall of your home. And then a fence that is less than 50% open. So the variation there is that fences need to be at least 50% open and closed. So we really don't permit privacy fences within the village of Burr Ridge. So the resident petitioned the Plan Commission. The Plan Commission unanimously voted to deny all three variations. At this time, the resident has asked to revise that petition to ask for fewer variations. And at this point, staff is requesting that this be remanded to the Plan Commission for another hearing.
Trustee Francis?
What would the fewer variations be?
Speaking with the petitioner is requesting that the fence be, in the first place, she's requesting that the fence be solid, but she's removed her variation request to have it be in the side yard.
So it'll still be 6 feet tall and it'll still be solid?
She prefers, in the order of her preferences, speaking with her, she prefers that it be solid first. That's the most important element of her petition. The second is that it be 6 feet tall, and the third and the least most important to her is that it be in the side yard. So the most important item is that it be a solid privacy fence.
Thank you.
I don't have a problem sending it back to the Plan Commission.
Won't see any much disagreement here. Okay, do I have a motion to remand this back to the Plan Commission?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Skiappa.
Yes.
Trustee Snyder.
Yes.
Trustee Pavesa.
Yes.
Trustee Model.
Yes.
Trustee Francis.
Yes.
5-0.
Motion passes 5-0. Next will be 6E. This was removed earlier by Trustee Francis.
Yes, thank you. Well, first and foremost, I want to welcome Hampton Social to the village. We're excited about having them as corporate neighbors and providing a wonderful establishment to serve the needs of the residents. Secondly, I do support the sign amendment, the request for variations for the signs that the petitioner is requesting. I did attend the first Plan Commission meeting, and I'm glad to see that the petitioner has toned down their request and made it less obtrusive. But I do want to talk a moment about something the Plan Commission discussed, and that was the painting of the building white. And they mentioned how the facade of the building that they're occupying in the village center is painted white. You know, as a member of the Plan Commission, over 10 years ago, we spent hours and hours, Commissioner Trupek could vouch for this, discussing the textures, the finishes, the colors, the materials of the exterior of the various storefronts in the village center. And whitewashing, painting things white like this was never considered. It was too stark. It was not welcoming. So, but what's been done is done, and so we're going to live with it. But the Plan Commission is recommending that future requests to change the exterior of the facades of the town center come before them for discussion. And I just want to say I support that request, and that the Plan Commission be given an opportunity to comment on proposed changes to the exterior of the facades in the village center. When the village center new owners came back and asked us for permission to make numerous enhancements 2 years ago to the village center, and we unanimously agreed with those. We wanted to make sure that those enhancements were keeping in tone with what was already been established for the village center. And we want to make sure that continues, and that changing or painting or covering up facades and features of the village center is to be discussed first with the Plan Commission prior to those things actually occurring. So that's my only comment about this. With that said, if there's hopefully some agreement with other trustees. With that said, I'll make the motion to approve the sign variances for Hampton Social.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Doug, did they get that painting, because I saw those notes from the planning commission as well, was that approved?
Yes, staff approved it. In hindsight, as I told the Plan Commission, in hindsight, I regret that decision, and we certainly heard the Plan Commission loud and clear that that constitutes a change in the PUD, and if anyone else proposes to do it, it will have to come back to the Plan Commission.
That's it, thank you.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Paveza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Skiappa?
Yes.
5-0.
5-0. Under consideration, we have presentation of proposed 2017 tax levy.
Yes, Finance Director Jerry Sapp will give you an overview of the 2017 tax levy. This is something we do at this time every year. Then ask for some discussion from the village board. Our police and fire pension board's actuary is also present and would like to make a recommendation. And there's a resident, Tom White, who's also asked to comment on this matter. And I would turn it over to Jerry for the presentation.
Switch it.
And as soon as I switch the feed.
Good evening. I'll give you an overview of our tax levy and the process that we go through to generate the annual tax levy. The 2007 tax levy is the first step in our annual budget process. We propose it in November. Then the first meeting in December, we will have a public hearing. The amounts levied and collected by the assessor happens in 2018. And this is all part of receiving our fiscal year 2018-19 budget. The levy is comprised of 3 separate levies. The corporate, which is used for general governmental services, police protection, which is used for police services, and then the police pension, which is our employer contribution to the police pension fund. Some basic terminology used in the tax levy. The CPI, this is a measurement of U.S. prices for household goods and services. It's a cost of living index. Equalized assessed valuation, or the EAV. This is a result of applying the state equalization factor to assess valuation of a parcel of property. Tax bills are calculated on assessed valuations by multiplying the EAV by tax rates. The property tax extension law, also referred to as the tax cap, it limits the increases on property tax on non-home rural communities like Burr Ridge, taxing districts. It also limits increases on existing property to the CPI plus any additional amount for new construction. And then finally, the limiting rate. This is a calculation prepared and provided by the county assessor's office that we have to levy under the tax cap. The village levies an amount under the tax cap limiting rate, and the process are these 5 steps, and I'll go through each one of them briefly. Estimate the new EAV, calculate the limiting rate under the tax cap, then apply the limiting rate to the estimated new EAV, and determine what dollars we have available for the tax levy. The 4th step is to allocate the statutory requirement to the police pension fund. And finally, any remaining dollars get allocated to the corporate and police levies to complete the levy request. So step 1 is to estimate what we think we're going to have in our new EAV. We currently have $1,055,000 in 2006 property value EAV. This year we're increasing a 6% increase, which is comprised of a 2% increase in value and a 4% increase in new construction. These estimates are overestimated, and the reason is because so we can allow sufficient enough room to ensure that we capture the maximum amount under the tax cap. So using this estimate, we have arrived at $1,118,000 as the village's estimated 2017 EAV. Then comes the limiting rate under the tax cap. This formula is provided by the county assessor. If our limiting rate is low, we'll receive what we requested. If our estimate is high, our request will be reduced. So this formula, it's basically taking the last year's levy and increasing it by the cost of living index. Then we have that number and we divide it by last year's EAV, estimated by that 2% cost in living we're coming up. And all that equals the limiting rate. Once again, that's provided by the county assessor's office. So if I apply the village's numbers to this, so last year's levy is $1,149,000, increased by 2.1%, and then divide that by our final EAV of last year of $1,055,000, and then add that 2% cost of living, and then divide the two numbers, you get a limiting rate of 0.1090, and that's what we can levy underneath the tax cap. So we have our estimated EAV, and then our tax rate, and that says, by doing the math here, that means we are estimating we'll have available $1,219,390 in available tax dollars. And as compared to last year, EAV of $1,149,000, we are estimating $70,076 in new tax dollars. Now that's just an estimate, and it's estimated high. You'll probably receive probably 20 to 30,000 less than that, unless there's a lot of new property coming online. The fourth step is to set aside the legally required employer contribution to the police pension fund per state statutes. Approximately 61% of this levy will be set aside for the employer contribution for the police pension fund, and this amount is determined by the village's actuary and is the funding plan for our village. So of the $1,219,360 available that we've estimated under the tax cap, $748,665 will be set aside for the police pension fund. That leaves $470,695 for the other two levies of corporate and police protection. So putting all that together, you come up with the overall tax levy, proposed tax levy. Up at the top here, we have our estimated EAV, our increases in value, what the tax we expect to receive, what the limiting rate is, that's what we levy under the tax cap, 70,000, and that's a 6.1% increase. So what all these numbers mean to the residents. So on your tax bill, approximate less than 2% or 0.016 of every dollar goes to the resident's tax bill. So less than 2% on your tax bill is the village's portion. And then using an example of a $600,000 home in Burr Ridge, on the DuPage side, that would be $222, and on the Cook side, that would be $187. This is an example of just a home. And finally, in summary, we've estimated the tax levy at $1,219,360 under the proposed tax rate 1.1090, which equals the limiting rate. The village is required to hold a public hearing under the Truth in Taxation Law, and this is where we approve the levy in the December 11th meeting. And it's our recommendation that the proposed levy for 2017 be accepted and the staff be authorized to prepare notice for the public hearing for December. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions from the board?
No questions. I don't have a question on that, but I would like you to flip back to the screen that shows where the dollars go, or the houses, because
Dollar?
I hear continually from people about how high the taxes are in Burr Ridge. And I just want to emphasize to the residents that the village gets a very, very, look at that thing there, small portion of your tax dollar. And if there is an increase, next screen, where you have the house, Jerry, I think you're showing what, at the most part that goes to the village is $5? So when people complain about their taxes, they ought to give us some credit that the village is extremely frugal in how they spend and use tax dollars, because we get a very, very little of your tax dollar. The village does. The rest goes to schools, county, and other people. I just wanted to emphasize that, that's all.
Trustee Francis?
If I could, please leave the screen up with the house on it. Thank you. If I could add to that, Trustee Pavesa, for $200 on a typical $600,000 home, you get the finest police protection in the suburbs, the finest police force. You have excellent roads, excellent snow removal, a host of other activities that are provided for by staff, services that are provided for by staff. But roads and police protection are two biggest services provided for by the village. And for $200, compare that to what we spend on the Park District, or certainly the schools, of course. But my tax bill, the Park District bill, is 3 times what I spend for the village. And unless I take part in those programs, I don't get anything. But so what we get from the village here for $200 is a bargain. And I appreciate staff, the hard work of staff, the dedicated police force that we have in providing those services to all the residents here in the village.
Anything else?
I believe next, the actuary that was hired by the Police Pension Board would like a few minutes of your time.
By the police, might be hired by the Police Pension Board? How to explain that?
Right. Jerry, you want to explain?
This is the Police Pension Board's actuary, Jason Franken. He's from the firm Foster & Foster, and he's here to discuss the Pension Board's recommendation for the tax.
The village hires our own actuary, and the proposal, the recommendation you have before us is based on the actuarial study done by the village's actuary. The Police and Fire Pension Board has the right to hire an independent actuary on their own, and that's what they've done, and that's what you're
So
about
it's
to
not
hear.
a village, it's not, I guess it's village related, but not village hired? Is that
Right,
the idea?
right.
Just for clarification for the residents, okay. Yes, sir?
Has the pension board had an actuary in the past?
I believe we have.
Yeah.
Doug? Trustee Schiava asked, have they always had their own actuary?
For several years.
Recently, we, in the last few years, the village got their own actuary. We have other requirements, the state funding requirement that we do, along with the recommendation. And also, we have a lot of reporting requirements from the governmental accounting standard boards that issues a whole separate report. So there's a lot of kind of unrelated pension items that our actuary, it's related, but it's additional. That's just not something that pension fund does. We pay for that out of the corporate fund, out of auditing services. This service is paid out of the pension fund.
This is paid for out of the pension fund to get more pensions, basically. You get higher. Interesting. So we're basically paying ourselves to fight ourselves.
The pension board has that authority to hire their own actuary.
Just trying to get clarification.
Okay. All right. Well, my name is Jason Franken, and I am an actuary with Foster & Foster. I'm a fellow of the Society of Actuaries and an enrolled actuary. The one thing that I really wanted to discuss tonight is just the funding policy that is being used. The recommendation that was just made is based on the statutory minimum required contribution by the state of Illinois. It's in the Illinois Pension Code, Article 3 of the Illinois Pension Code. And that outlines the minimum amount that the village has to put in to satisfy their obligation by this, according to the state. What that does not consider is the long-term health of the village in that calculation. And what's in the Illinois Pension Code, the statutory minimum, is effectively, from a personal perspective, if you had a credit card bill with, let's just say, $10,000 of charges, you're paying 7% interest on that. And the amount of money that you're contributing, that you're making towards your payment each year, covers about 80 to 85% of the interest that's being charged on your credit card. So your credit card bill this month is $10,000. You make a payment, but it's not large enough to cover the interest. So next month your credit card bill is $10,300. Then you do the same thing, and what happens is that your balance continues to grow. And you're not, even though you're making payments, those payments aren't sufficient to cover the interest that's accruing on your balance. So what happens is your unfunded liability begins to snowball. And you end up with mountains of unfunded liability if you allow this to go on for decades and decades. I think you can look at the state of Illinois and the $130 billion of unfunded liability that we have in our state plans and ask the question, how did we get there? And the biggest reason is that the contributions have not been sufficient to pay that unfunded liability down. And that's part of what I do with the pension board is to make recommendations on an approach that is more financially sound than what's in the Illinois Pension Code. According to the state, the contributions you're making are perfectly legitimate, they're perfectly fine, you've met their obligation. But those rules and laws were not set based on what's financially sound. It's a Band-Aid that's put on repeatedly for places that can't afford to make their pension contributions, and it doesn't consider your long-term best interest. Based on my calculations on a more sound approach, I would recommend that your contribution be increased by over $150,000 from where the recommendation is. That would help you make a dent in your unfunded liability rather than allowing it to grow. And the reason it doesn't cover, the reason why it grows like that is because you probably heard of the pension ramp. You have this contribution that's designed to increase, in your case, by over 3% per year. And in the short term, those payments that are being made aren't large enough to cover that interest, like I described. So you get this issue called negative amortization going on, where you're making the payments, you're not making a dent in your unfunded liability. In fact, it continues to grow. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to help you understand that based on the Illinois Pension Code, you're meeting your obligation. But meeting your obligation and making contributions that are in the best interest of your village on a long-term basis are two different things. And if you take anything from my conversation tonight or my discussion tonight, it's the path that you're on by making these statutory funding, statutory minimum contributions is not going to reduce your unfunded liability. In fact, we would expect it to continue to grow and grow and grow until the payments have increased to a level that's sufficient to start paying them down. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have.
Trustee Snyder?
Jerry, did this gentleman get all the same information that we have with regards to?
I haven't seen that.
They supplied with all of them? Yes. Okay, so We were passed out, is this the sheet that you passed out?
I don't know, I haven't seen that sheet, I don't know
It's
what
from
that is.
Foster and Foster.
No, that's from the pension.
No,
That's from the police pension.
That was from Foster and Foster, okay.
You're referring to Foster.
Okay.
yes, so if it's from the police pension board, that's probably information that's in my report that was provided, but I haven't seen that specific sheet at this point.
Trustee Skiappa?
I assume that you work for other municipal police pensions.
Yes, I do.
In your opinion, regarding our funding, where does Blue Ridge sit in regards to other municipalities?
In terms of your peers, the average funded ratio in the state of Illinois for a police pension plan is upper 50s, 69% based on my calculations. However, it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison because the average what the state would provide is based on an investment return assumption of 6.75%. So we've been using 7% as our assumption. So if we were to lower that to 6.75%, we would lower the expected investment income, and that would result in more liability. So on an apples-to-apples basis, that would probably come down from 69% to somewhere 64, 65% in all likelihood. But it still would be above the average pension fund, police pension fund in the state of Illinois.
Trustee Pavetta?
I've been following this pension, and I know they come up here all the time and want us to increase. And the thing that I look at, and I realize that there's going to be a day of reckoning at some point. Now, we're around 70%, and we're in the upper third of pension. And like you said, most people are in the 50s. So what's going to happen? There's got to be a change. So are the ones like us that are paying and do good, are we the ones that are going to be penalized? Or what's going to happen? Because we're at 70% and the majority of people are in the mid-50s. So why should we continue and rush up and get ahead when most of the people are falling behind? And that's the problem I have. Why should I ask the village, our people, to pay more money to get ahead of the game when the majority of the villages are falling behind and aren't doing nothing about it?
Well, that's a very good question. My response is that you currently have almost $8 million of unfunded liability. That unfunded liability is for service that's occurred in the past. And what the Illinois Supreme Court has said repeatedly is that you can't change benefits for people who are already in the system. So that $8 million is not going away.
Yeah, but you're still not answering, has there been anything on how these other people that are in the 50s going to get caught up?
Well, that's a good question, but I think that having a funded ratio higher than average in the state of Illinois sorry?
Can you just answer his question? I appreciate it. He's just asking you one simple question. What's going to happen to the individuals paying less than 50%? And you keep going around. He just asked one simple question.
Okay, well, to answer the question, they're going to have to come up with a lot more money. And they have a debt, just like you have a debt. It's to compare yourself to other people, I don't think that that's necessarily a wise decision, because you have a debt. You have to make decisions that are best for you from a financial perspective. Maybe that is deferring some of the contributions into
Well, that's
the
the point I'm trying to get. Are they going to allow these villages to go bankrupt, or are we going to pay more, and nobody's answering that question, and that's the problem. I just can't see asking our villages to pay $150,000 a year more in taxes when nobody else is doing anything about it. That's the problem I have in my decision making. And nobody's answering that question.
Is it Jason?
Yes.
And it's 100,000, wait, 100, you're recommending?
It's about $150,000 different.
Now, in order, that money has to come from somewhere. Would you recommend that we hire one less policeman?
I am not here to tell you what to do. I'm telling you, I'm here to educate you. And I don't have the answers. That's why you guys are sitting where you are. You're the ones who have to make the tough decision about what's in the best interest for Burr Ridge. That's your decision. What I'm here is I'm meeting my professional obligation to describe to you the funding pattern that you're on, the funding approach that you're using, and the shortfalls that exist in that approach. Whether you choose to do anything with that information, that's up to you. But I am here as a professional to tell you, as I said at the very beginning, the approach that you're using is like having a credit card bill and not paying the interest. So the debt is going to continue to increase. And at some point, that's going to have to be addressed, whether it's legislatively or otherwise. And so that's really why I'm here, is to help educate you.
So you're saying the state minimum isn't enough to get us where we need to be in what, 30, 40 years?
It could potentially get you there. However, your contribution 20 years from now will be 3 times higher than what it is today because of that escalation. So by deferring the contributions, you're going to have to, pensions are pay now or pay later. And when you're paying later, you have to not only pay the amount you originally owe, but you have to pay 7% compounded interest on that amount that you didn't pay. So when you're paying later, you have to pay a whole lot more later.
I have a question for you, and this is something I'm learning more and more about, but now, how many different police pensions are there in the state of Illinois?
I don't have the exact number. In total, between police and fire, there's about 650. What the breakdown is between those two groups, I'm not sure.
650 individual ones, right?
Yes.
Now, and just for the education of our residents, how does that differ from the IML, for example? IMRF, rather.
IMRF, there's one plan that covers all of the municipal employees that are non-public safety.
And the benefit to that is what?
The biggest benefit, I think, there's one. The biggest benefit is that it's a larger plan, so they could get lower expenses as a percentage of the total pot. The other advantage is really a legislative advantage. IMRF doesn't have the restrictions that are placed on your Article 3 police pension plan in terms of investments. So investments, they have the prudent person rule, where the trustees decide whether or not to make an investment in a variety of different things, whether it's equities, whether it's derivatives, or whatever it might be. The board decides that. For your Article 3 pension plan, they're written into the pension code are restrictions about what the fund can invest in. They're limited to how much they can invest in equities. They're limited into the types of fixed income investments they can make. And so as a result, we would expect the IMRF plan to be able to earn a higher investment return because of the additional opportunities that they have. Granted, they're probably taking more risk. I think if you look historically, when the times have been good, IMRF has done better than police pension plans. But in those down years, they are invested in more risky assets. So in those down periods, IMRF does worse than your plan or other Article 3 plans. So, like I said, one of the advantages is potentially getting lower expenses, and the other one is legislative based on what they can invest in.
Maybe less overhead expenses too, isn't there? Less administration, less people managing it. Is the overall?
Well,
is that true, or I always seems like consolidation would be a benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, each plan has to have all of all of these services, like actuary, accounting, an attorney. So there could potentially be some additional expenses under the current system, but IMRF has a staff of hundreds, or I don't even know how many people are employed by IMRF. So it is not necessarily an apples-to-apples comparison to know. So I can't tell you off the top of my head what efficiencies there would be under consolidation.
This has been one of my favorite topics for a long time with pensions, not all public pensions, which is just killing us, in my own opinion. And it's been out of control, and unfortunately, we not only have unfunded mandates, we have requirements from the state to make deposits that a lot of villages cannot afford. We're better, and we're by your own admission, we're better than most, but not perfect. So we want to try and improve that. So, yes, Trustee Snyder.
Doug, is all of this public knowledge as of?
Yes.
So, and Jason, you never saw, did you look before you reviewed Burr Ridge, the public knowledge where this thing that was passed up, but maybe you didn't see, says that we have 6 million, yet our public knowledge says we have 16.9 million, a $10 million in favor of us. We're probably even higher than the 70%. So did you do any review before you got up there to talk?
So this particular document, I had not seen that, no.
It's not that document. It's public knowledge stating that the Village of Burr Ridge Police Pension Fund, as of April 30th, 2017, had $16.9 million in it. And this little sheet, sheet of paper that you cite, somehow that you said you didn't read, stating the fact that somewhere around $6 million. So it's a $10 million.
As of May 1st of 2017, the market value of the assets in your police pension plan is $16.9 million.
Okay. And you didn't see this sheet?
I did not see that sheet. I was not provided that sheet. But my report that I provided has outlined all of the calculations and the assets and liabilities in the plan.
Any other questions of Jason? I'm sorry.
So I thank you for making your presentation. I recognize this is a difficult subject for a lot of people, as we've mentioned already tonight. I mean, I'm looking at our budget and our spending. I mean, essentially the increase would be exactly what we spend on police altogether, or half of what it costs to run the whole village. I mean, it is just unbelievable. And I recognize the promises that were made, and I think that we as a body need to look at those promises going forward and to really think about how to stem the growth of this, because we can't change what's already been promised, we can't change what's in the hopper, but we really got to change this curve going forward for the next few decades, or we won't get out of it. But I'm not in favor of getting any farther ahead than we are already. I think, like we've talked about, we're better than most. We saw what happened in Detroit. That's one solution as well to solve the problem, and I certainly hope that never happens here, but I don't think we're going to be the first people to have to deal with it. So, just the cost of what it would do to other village services and everything else, I don't see how we could reasonably make the additional contribution that you recommend.
And I'm not assuming that we're never going to reach it, but based on going by the state limitations, we may be there.
I think we're well ahead.
Pardon me?
I think we're well ahead, and we will maybe do better than that. Just another question: how much does the cost of how much does the fund pay for the actuary services, the additional services?
$3,500.
Okay.
I think.
On the other hand, we know that some of the state's recommendations have not been very accurate in recent years, as evidenced by unpaid bills and unfunded liabilities. So.
Could I make one comment to what he said?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you talked about going forward. One thing that is relatively new is that at the end of 2010, the Springfield implemented a Tier 2 system. And so now there are 2 tiers of benefits. And so anyone who was hired after 2010, assuming they hadn't participated in a Article 3 police pension plan anyplace else, comes in as a Tier 2 person. And those Tier 2 benefits are significantly less valuable than Tier 1. So for a Tier 1 member, a general rule of thumb is that for every $1 of payroll that they get a pension benefit that equals about 30 cents. So about 30% of their pay is their normal cost. The normal cost is the value of the benefit that they're earning each year. They pay approximately 10% of their pay, each paycheck. So the village is really picking up 20 cents for every $1 of payroll for a Tier 1 person. 20 cents. For a tier 2 person, their benefits after a reduced COLA, they have to work until age 55, an 8-year averaging of their salaries to determine their pension benefit. The value of their benefits are about 15% of pay. So rather than 30%, it's 15%. They're still contributing that same 10% of their pay. So the village's portion of tier 2 people is about 5% of pay. So from 20% of pay down to 5% of pay. So it's about a 75% reduction in the normal cost. That doesn't do anything to eliminate the unfunded liability, but what it does is your liabilities in the future, as tier 2 people enter the system, so it's going to take a while. You know, people are going to have to work an entire career and retire before you'll see all of the savings. The growth in your liabilities is going to slow down dramatically, you know, of the future liabilities. So I wanted to point that out. There is, you know, that was part of the pension legislation. It's working, but it just takes time you know, for the population to turn over before you'll recognize all of those savings.
Right. Other options are not hiring staff, so you have no pension, right? You're not filling positions and or hiring part-time people that don't have these kind of benefits attached to them, which I've seen done in other villages that have part-time staff in quite a few areas. But so there are a lot of options for us to consider going forward. I appreciate what you said.
Yeah, Jason, I want to get more information on that, because I was in Springfield when that passed, and when Tier 2 came along. I heard it was more like a Band-Aid and what didn't have that much long-term effect.
Well, it didn't do anything to reduce the unfunded liability. So that $8 million of unfunded liability, or nearly $8 million of unfunded liability that we have right now, the Tier 2 doesn't do anything to lower that. So that's the elephant in the room, right? This unfunded liability for past service, that's what's driving the contributions at this point. Nearly half of your contribution is going to pay for services that have been provided at some point in the last 30 or 40 years. And so Tier 2, you're right, doesn't do anything to reduce that, which is driving the increases that we're seeing now. But over the long term, if you can get your unfunded liability under control, then Tier 2 will produce, you know, significant savings.
A friend of mine once told me 2 years ago that we need a third party other than Republican and Democrat. We need the math party. Someone didn't do the math.
There seems to be rarely any math done whenever there's any proposed pension legislation coming out of Springfield. It's just a Band-Aid in each and every case. Usually that Band-Aid is to lower the short-term obligation and kick the can down the road for future generations to deal with.
Thank you, Jason. Any other questions of Trustee Scapa?
Just for frame of reference, our fund is approximately 68.6%.
Yep.
Let's speculate if we get the fund to 100% funded, that means that every officer on the force could retire today. If we're 100% funded, is that correct?
If you're 100% funded, that means as of that date, you've met all of your liabilities. That doesn't account for what's going to be earned in the next year or the year after that, but it means that all of the pension liabilities that have been earned up to that point, so for everyone who's come through the system, their liabilities are covered by assets. So I guess at that point, if everyone retired, then some of them probably wouldn't be eligible to retire, but if everyone could retire, then yes.
Francis?
Jason, thank you for the explanation, particularly of the Tier 1 and the Tier 2. Mr. Stricker has tried to explain this to us numerous times, and always it's refreshing to hear it from a different perspective, but thank you for explaining it. Now, I do understand the math, so it's helpful to me. Keep in mind that this $748,665 recommendation for 2017 is the minimum amount required by the state of Illinois, by the financial experts at Springfield who are driving our state into bankruptcy. So do we follow their advice, or do we take our own path and make sure that Burbridge is solvent and the police pension fund is solvent, and that well, sure, we're better off than most other villages, but why not be the best? Why you know, be better than most when we can do a better job in ensuring that our pension fund is fully funded? So, thank you.
Anyone else? We have some residents. A resident that would like to address the board this time?
They're 3 minutes, 5 minutes each. 5 minutes each.
Yeah, 5 minutes, right.
I'm hoping I can get more, so we'll see what happens. My name's Tom White. I live in the Carriageway subdivision. For about 6.5 years, I served as a trustee on the police pension board. Prior to that, I retired after serving 10 years as the executive director of the Water Reclamation District Retirement Fund. I'm going to basically go from my prepared notes. I'm here to reflect on the police pension fund. Recall that pension funding is a three-legged stool. Officers and the village contributions are the two primary legs, with the third leg coming from the investment of those assets. Since 1993, the state has provided Illinois villages two options for funding pensions. Pay as you go, $1 a dollar, or pay less now and much more later. Maybe you'll pay 80 cents, 81 cents, 82 cents for the initial years, until eventually the contribution would become $1, then $1.05, then $1.10. The first method is the actuarial standard. The second is not. Our village, just as many others, opted for the 80-cent contribution, thus allowing more dollars for other expenses. We're never, in terms of funding a police pension fund, talking about more taxes from people. We're just talking about how we spend the assets that this village has. Again, in 2011, the state allowed the village to reset the clock. And the village was back to contributing 80 cents, 81 cents, etc., on the dollar for the initial 20 years, followed by 10 years of significantly escalating contributions to achieve 90% funding by 2040. Many have called this discounted plan the equivalent of balancing the budget on the backs of the pension fund. As you might have guessed, discounted contributions have led to a wobbly stool. Imagine one with legs being 20% shorter. In actuarial terms, this causes deficits which are described as unfunded liabilities. You should know that as of 2000, our police pension has had a balanced stool. Since then, the stool has become increasingly dysfunctional. When reviewing a pension plan status, the most important issues are: one, the funded ratio, compares the assets to the present value of the liabilities. 100% is perfect, 90% is great, 80% is good, 70% is poor, and less than 60% is failing. The unfunded liability is the difference between the present value of the earned benefits and the current assets. So if, for example, the money that you should have right now to cover all of the officers' service so far, and the ones that are retired, is $100, and you only have $50, then you're only 50% funded. A historical perspective is also important. Decreasing fund ratios and increasing deficits is bad. The opposite is good. The 2011 Reset the Clock discounted funding has been accompanied by the following significant occurrences. Additional 2001 changes included significantly reducing benefits for new hires. That's the tier 2 you talked about earlier. Eventually, in 2014, the Illinois Supreme Court rebuffed the legislators' efforts to also reduce benefits for retired and active officers. Also, it empowered pension funds to recover village pension contributions that are less than the state minimum. The actuarial community performs their valuations and recommendations based upon actuarial standards. So in other words, whereas before they might have been able to, let's say, recommend the state minimum, that isn't what they do anymore. They're covering themselves also, and you'll see when we get to yours. Municipal auditors are required to reevaluate actuarial statements by closer examinations of expected investment returns. Government accounting standards now require pension excesses or deficits to be reported on the village's balance sheet. The county treasurer provides access to the village's auditor's financial statements and disclosures. That is, thus, it is felt that today's actuarial statements are more reliable than those published in the past, which used a non-standard actuarial method. As of last year, the village has retained L&A as their actuary. Pension Board has retained Foster & Foster as their actuary. Statutorily, the Pension Board has to have their own actuary. The extra actuary is the one the village has, not the one the Pension Board has. And Jerry gave you some reasons for why he felt they needed that. One of the reasons I know the Pension Board felt they needed that is because they didn't want their actuary computing a minimum, state minimum contribution, because they didn't want to see that. So why should they pay for it? Thus, you have your own actuary, I guess. You will or have already heard a summary of the retirement funds actuary, Foster & Foster. My expectation is that the village administration will present the L&A data that references the minimum state contribution. And for example, when Jerry started out, his first step in the process was not one that every village does. It was to go ahead and put in the state minimum as what was required, the state minimum. There are a lot of villages that say, no, we're going to pay an actuarially sound number, and they start with a different number than the one that Jerry put in, and the one that Steve was putting in ever since I've been here. The village is compliant, the village is compliant with the state funding statutes as long as they contribute the minimum amount, which they have done since 2011 levy. That's the 80 cents, 81 cents. The L&A actuarial statement includes the state minimum valuation and the state minimum contribution as requested by the village administration. However, the L&A valuation of fund assets and recommended contributions is based upon standard actuarial methods. So in other words, when the village gets the report, there's a part towards the end of the report that is the state minimum. The earlier part is the part where L&A has said, this is how we value the fund based on actuarial standards. This is what we feel you should be putting in. It's the village administration that's telling you to put in less. Lastly, B&K, the village auditors, determined that the 7% discount investment assumption utilized by L&A should be 6.25%. Obviously, if they looked at the Foster & Foster one, they would say the same thing. It should be 6.25%. This is based on them getting in touch with our investment manager, looking at our investment policy, our asset allocation, and then knowing what the current industry expectations are for what the funds are what you're going to achieve by investing in these asset classes. I've included the corresponding data that is currently available to me in the reserve side of this paper. So if you flip over, this is from last year's because I haven't been able to see this year's. But I wrote in it by pencil, 2016, when they did the minimum calculation, L&A said that the pension deficit was $7.579 million, that the funded ratio was 68.10, and that the required minimum contribution was $780. I penciled in below it that this year, evidently from what Jerry's saying, they must have computed the state minimum to be the $748,655. But in that same report last year, this is what L&A said. Your actual unfunded liability is not $7.5 million. It's over $9 million. Your funded ratio is not 68.1. It's 64.1. And the recommended contribution from your actuary was $951,288 last year. You only put in $780. So I said you should look at this historical trending information to see where you're going. Well, if you go back to 2011, you can see the funded ratio goes from 4.6 to 5.4 to 5.5 to 5.8 to 6.3, and now it's at 9 million. The difference is that all of those numbers up until 2015 were computed using the minimum state calculations and not actuarial calculations, which is what started in 2016. The kicker is is that even though these deficits got greater, is during this period we've had a bull market. We've had 7 years basically of a bull market. Then if you look at what B&K said, B&K, your auditor, and it's in your audit report on page 65, they said, well, we really think that your discount rate, your investment assumption should be 6.25%. That means your liabilities aren't really 7 million or 9 million, they're actually 12.5 million, and your funded ratio is actually 57.39%. Earlier, Trustee Paveza asked about, what's going to happen. Well, something's happened already. City of Harvey, the pension fund brought a suit against them because they weren't even putting in the state minimum. So as of May 1st, 2014, their pension fund.
Ms. Wright, normally it'd be 5 minutes for residents to mention this. You've already been on for 10. Could you wrap it up in the next minute or two, please?
I will try to do that. I'm hoping, though, the trustees wanted to ask questions that they could. I've got some answers to Mr. Paveza's. The Harvey Firefighters Pension Fund was down to a funded ratio of 27.18. As of May 2015, they had 47 active firefighters, 67 retirees. Experts testified before the courts that in approximately 5 years, they thought they'd be bankrupt. The appellate court affirmed an order that required the city to pay $11.6 million, to the pension fund, basically through line item property tax levies, if you will. And the Illinois Supreme Court denied hearing the case. My finishing on this is yesterday during my great-granddaughter's baptism, pastor had the congregation recite the stewardship prayer. This caused me to reflect upon our stewardship of our now plural granddaughter's college tuition fund. Somehow seems similar to the discretionary authority regarding the police pension tax levy amount. In both cases, there's no new money. More money for the police pension fund implies less for everything else. Yours is a legal fiduciary duty. Mine is voluntary. Stewardship prayer includes the following. Gracious and loving God, we understand that you call us to be stewards of your abundance, the caretakers of all that you have entrusted us. Help us always to use your gifts wisely. I'm basically saying that by ignoring and allowing the elephant to get even bigger in the room, you're not using your gifts wisely. You have to have someone, maybe the village manager, sharpen the pencil. That's what needs to be done. Any questions?
Well, the one question I would have, like I always have, the state has given us, not us, but municipalities a minimum. And we have been paying this minimum. Now, if we're going down, and I would think that someone in the state would say, hey, let's raise the minimum instead of keeping it as it is.
No, they're not going to raise the minimum when you have the municipal league going down there lobbying for villages to get some more relief. Because if you think it's busting your budget now, just wait 10 years. I'm serious, especially if you let this go on. I mean, it's going to be really bad.
I'm curious too.
The state of Illinois right now is at the point where 24% of the dollars they take in is needed to pay their pension, their actuarial pension liabilities. So, I mean, it's going to get worse. And don't expect the courts are not going to do anything for you. Maybe somebody will go ahead and start a new Ponzi scheme going over again, and they'll start you down at 80 cents again 15 years from now. Eventually, somebody's got to pay.
Thank you, Ms. White.
Thank you.
Finance Director, do you have any final comments? No? Anything else, Village Administrator, on the tax levy?
I would just add that, and maybe Jerry could make sure I explained this correctly, but I think we pointed out in the summary that that we are following a plan, a long-range plan, to get us to 90% funded in year 2040. Unfunded liability goes up before it goes down, but it does go down at some point under that plan.
Excuse me. And the state's never bashful about how that they should tell you you should spend your money. They don't usually undercut that. But hopefully those.
Well, if I may, just one more thing I wanted to add is we are following the state requirement, but we're not blindly following the state requirement. We have a finance director, we have an actuary, and we put our eyes on it. And again, yeah, we are following it, but not blindly.
Thank you. Moving on to consideration of Pathway Commission recommendation regarding construction of a sidewalk on the east side of County Line Road from Longwood Drive to 60th Street.
Yes, this is a consideration from the Pathway Commission. Unfortunately, the Pathway Commission couldn't meet last week due to a lack of a quorum, but they had met on this subject in January of this year. And at that time, they stated that a sidewalk on the east side of County Line Road from Longwood Drive to 60th Street was their highest priority of all the projects in their plan. They have a plan that was originally done in 2009 and updated since then. If you'll just bear with me, I'll get this back on the screen. So they did mention that, as I said, the east side of County Line Road from Longwood Drive to 60th Street is their highest priority. In 2011 or 2012, we received grant funding for this project of $284,000. Subsequent to receiving that grant, as additional engineering got done, the price went up significantly. It almost doubled, or it did double, I believe. So rather than proceed with the project with that deficit of 284 to, I believe it was 750, approximately, I'll use round numbers, the village board said, let's continue to try to get more grant funding. Well, we've tried several times. We tried in 2016. We were close, but didn't get it. Tried again in 2 different grant applications in 2017, and actually we went down in our ranking. So now we're at the position where if we want to proceed with this project, we need to make that decision now so that final engineering can start and we can utilize the 284 that we have available to us in grant funding. The Pathway Fund, which has always been the sole source of funding for sidewalk projects, however, does not have sufficient funds in it to cover the full cost of this project. We come up just under $200,000 short in the Pathway Fund in fiscal year 2018-19. So if the village board still wants to proceed with this project, you need to proceed with the awareness that as we do the budget for fiscal year 2018 and 19, we'll have to find an additional funds for the project. It can come from equity or come from cost savings in other areas. We'll be open-minded about closing that gap. But before we proceeded with final engineering, I wanted to bring that to your attention, give you another shot at it to make sure that this is something that the village board still wants to proceed with. And the chairperson of the Pathway Commission is in attendance, Pat Liss, if you got any questions about the Pathway Commission's review and recommendation.
I'd like to invite Pat Liss to the microphone to address this topic.
Hi again. This has been a top priority. We've been working on it for 5 years now, at least 5 years?
At least 7.
7 years, all right. 7 years, and yes, of course, the prices have gone up since we started. But being as frugal as we have been with our budget, we've always tried getting funding through different ways of helping us get the pathways in for less money on our part. And it's unfortunate that the price has gone up so high, but it is a major street in which we're talking about County Line Road. There are people that are neighborhoods along the way that want to utilize the sidewalk itself. I believe children can actually end up at Elm School with this project and going to the park, et cetera. It has been important, and we certainly need your funding to get through this. We don't have any funds coming in that I know of with large parcels being developed, and that's the only way that we were getting dollars into our budget, and no longer is that happening. So we have to look to you for the money for funding.
How many linear feet are we talking about?
Say again.
How many linear feet are we talking about?
Doug, you're going to have to pull it up.
Dave, do you recall that number? 0.6 of a mile, so that's
0.6. So we're saying that, what, we can get 284,000 in grant money, but we got to come up with 200,000? Is that what it basically boils down to?
well, that's the gap above the pathway, the total project. Dave, do you have those numbers in front of you?
I don't have them.
Dave?
45.
745. 284 would come from grant funding. 193 is unaccounted for, and the rest would come from what's left in the pathway fund. So about 300,000, just under $300,000 is in the pathway fund for sidewalks, dedicated solely for sidewalks. The pathway fund is saying, or pathway commission is saying that this is the priority, and they understand this depletes the pathway fund, but they feel this is high enough priority, they're okay with depleting that fund to build this project, but we're still $193,000 short. So that's, we're reminding you of that so that everybody goes into this.
This was
eyes
already
wide open.
budgeted for
It's
originally.
in the budget, right.
And we're just reminding that as a consideration before it goes to actual approval.
Right, to give you one last shot at it, just in case.
And when do we have to make a decision to make sure we have the grant money?
Well, grant funding is good through 2019, but if we want to do this in next fiscal year, we need to proceed now in order to get the final, because there's $30,000 in final engineering money in this year's budget, and so we would need to get started on that. We could wait a year and do it in the spring of 2019, spring or summer.
It's looking like it would be probably the end of, probably 18, 19. It would be starting the construction because of the time and the lag in the review process.
Grants. Do we have the money? We go through it, and we actually have the physical grant money, or is that going to potentially or possibly told we have it? Sitting on the college board, we were promised a lot of grants too, and we lost a lot of millions. So
this is a reliable source. We don't have the money in hand, but it's a surface transportation program administered by DuPage mayors and managers. They've never failed, to my knowledge.
Yes, and not at our house, but there is that coming of age with the federal highway administration coming down and all council governments, changing a little bit about how they're administering their programs. The available funds that are there may go to some of the projects funded otherwise. We're way out there, but we're in a different category, transportation control budget, TCMs. So we're in there, and to speak to why we fell on the rankings, we fell against a big project in Elmhurst to redo their metro station. So that had more than $1 million, $5 million to use the funds in that category of fund. So we had nothing for the we weren't there. They cut it off at that. So there was nothing left for us. But anyway, to speak to the point about the liability of STP funds, that's the game at the table right now with the Great Region Managers Conference. It's there, but they say 5 years out, maybe not. But I think we're still in that time frame.
Pat, now, this is your big one. This is the one that everybody in your committee feels very strongly about. There's no hesitation whatsoever.
No. No, it has been on a list to work on for, well, as we said, 7 years. So therefore, and this is something, yes, every time we come to a meeting, this is always the
Because that's
discussion.
probably one of the biggest dollar amounts that you come before the board.
The county line was, but the idea is that county line is, the traffic is doubling and tripling as time has gone on. I remember a time in which I never stopped at county line and the road that I would come out of, which is now right by the church down there. I never even bothered stopping when I first moved out here because there was no traffic. Now it's unbelievable. And so therefore, I mean, we worry about the safety of the children and the adults that are utilizing County Line Road, and they can't even, it's impossible down there. And it has been an important thing for us, so yes, definitely.
And increasing access to Catherine Leahy Park.
Yes.
As well as visitors to Kangaroo Bar also would be some more
And
accessible.
like I said, around the corner going to Elm School.
Right. Okay. Just capital.
And why wasn't it done in 12?
Again, we were waiting for better grants, better funding.
Yeah, if the original cost estimate had held, we would have done it then. But as soon as we went to final engineering, the cost went up from, I think it was originally under 400, and all of a sudden it was over 700. And so we thought, well, maybe we can get more grant funding, and we've tried a couple times.
Can we get any funding from parks? Catherine Leahy Park, to just make sure that maybe they can offset a little bit?
We can ask. I doubt that they want to pay, Village of Hinsdale would want to pay for sidewalk in Burr Ridge.
Make up for all the tax money from the Hinsdale Oasis.
The school's got a lot of money. They have the biggest budget. We saw they're the biggest line. Maybe they want to contribute. I was going to ask about the budget. It is in our budget for next year, this amount. You have budgeted it. So if we were to not do it, it would free up money in next year's budget. Could be used for a lot of things, maybe a pension payment, maybe something else, right? But it is budgeted. Okay, that's what I really wanted to understand.
Shame on you.
Competing priorities, right?
Pat, have you had any hearings or problems? Because I know when you were talking about doing a sidewalk that went past Burr Ridge Club. Pardon?
This was years ago that we had this, and yes, we did propose to have this pathway or sidewalk go in front of Burr Ridge Club, and that was we voted against that after hearing the people from Burr Ridge Club. They did not want it. But the people of Longwood am I saying that correctly, do want it. That's a neighborhood in which wants to utilize the sidewalk.
Okay. Trustee Francis?
So, at the north end of the proposed pathway is at 60th Street. At that point, does it connect to this sidewalk
On
the east side of
60th.
Conway Road and Catherine Lane?
Catherine Lake.
So then it would be all connected.
Correct.
So,
That's exactly what we're trying to do. We're trying to connect the dots, getting families, children, people from their homes to schools, parks, churches. Probably in the long run, we always want to try and even get them here to downtown Burr Ridge if they had access to go down Madison and come around that way. Of course, we'll never have the pathway going over the expressway, even though it's on our wish list. But if we had a benefactor to handle that, we would accept that right away.
so this, as you mentioned in the staff report here, this is the last leg of pathway that is currently
For that area.
on a major artery in our village.
Correct. Correct. On a very, very.
We're being asked to move about $193,000 for this gap, and then $150,000 for the gap, the pension fund, and it's $30,000.
It's
Gap.
sad sad that we had to have this on the same day. And believe me, when I sat there thinking, oh, they put that first, that bothered me also, but no, it's very important. I don't mean to take anything away from the police pension fund.
And the other trustees, they all know that this is some difficult terrain and we're going over with
Correct, and that's why engineering is so important also.
It's so important to have it engineered correctly, retaining walls and bridge and utility location, all that good stuff.
And at one time, we were actually using engineering from in-house, which we no longer do, so therefore the cost is up.
We still do the engineering in-house, but when it's a Cook County highway, we tend to ship it out because of the added expenses.
Complicated structures, right?
Any other questions? May I have a motion to authorize staff to proceed with final engineering regarding the construction of sidewalk on the east side of County Line Road from Longwood Drive to 60th Street?
One other question. Oh, actually, go ahead.
Ruth, you know, I just want to make sure of something that, I got to agree. So if we approve the final engineering, now we're saying that, we're going to spend $190,000, Patway Commission's got $300,000, and we're getting $284,000 in stuff. So that's how we're going to fund this, right? Once the engineering's done. Okay, I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second? There's a motion and a second. Discussion?
So we're approving motions to approve funding for final engineering. Should we decide not to go ahead with this, we put the final engineer on the shelf and revisit it later on at a later date should some other funds come available? We change our minds. Is that correct?
It's always possible, yeah. I
Yes.
mean, we'll do final engineering, and I think it's $30,000 additional in the budget for that. Current, and then once that's done, we'll go out to bid and we'll get real prices. And at that point, you'll have to say yay or nay to the contract to actually do the construction. Did I describe that right, Dave?
Phase two is, we're doing phase two as well?
That's included in those totals.
Okay, all right, okay. That's
Engineering plus the.
okay, all right. Thank you.
Motion and a second. May I have roll call, please?
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
Excuse me, Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you. And I was reminded by the village clerk that we need to go back to 8A
Yes.
and officially vote on that. And to need a motion to accept and authorize staff to prepare the notice for public hearing on the tax levy. That'll be on December 11th, I believe. We already discussed it, but we actually need an official motion to authorize.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Baveza?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Scalpa?
Yes.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
5-0.
That's 5-0. We're under K, other considerations for announcement, deliberation, and or discussion. Anything else to discuss? Nothing. We have a section for residents' comments, or any residents like to address the board. Reports and communications from village officials.
I thought, you want to mention, we got Jingle Mingle coming up Friday?
That's right. Yep. All right. Anybody want to talk about it? Other than myself? Jingle Mingle is Friday evening.
Ready?
And I believe it's 5 o'clock, is it?
5:30, I believe. I'm going to check my
5
calendar.
is lineup, 5:30 is the,
I wasn't sure of the time, that's why I didn't say nothing. I looked at it and I know it's Friday evening, but I couldn't, or Saturday evening, right? Or Friday?
Friday evening.
Friday evening,
November 17th, 5:30 PM at the Village Center.
Which will
the
be,
Village Center.
of course, is a full parade, Santa Claus, we have, of course, and we'll have our guest, the special guest every year is Mrs. Illinois America. This year, for the first time ever, we actually Mrs. Illinois America is a Burr Ridge resident. So Edna Smolka will be the guest of honor. We'll be helping light up the Christmas tree along with Santa Claus and doing the book reading with the children in the bookstore. And that will be phenomenal. I actually scheduled to be out of town right now, but I'm hoping to be able to reschedule that. But that'd be a great night for the kids. I hope you all can be there. I would like to, however, thank everyone that was involved with and attended the Veterans Day ceremony. A very special ceremony Saturday morning at 9 a.m. There was probably 20, 30 people there, and it was amazing how it all came together. Thanks to Paul Jepson of Kirsten's Bakery, arranged an honor guard from Oak Park Police Department. We also had our performer, our singer, was none other than Jennifer Pollock, our village administrator's wife, who sang Amazing Grace following Father Tom Coy of St. James prayer. She sang Amazing Grace. Tim Backlav, the chairman of the Veterans Memorial Committee, made some comments, as did I, and we finished with our national anthem, and then the honor guard left. So that was. Then Kirsten's Bakery also provided complimentary pastries over police department. It was really a special event. It was still under the actual ceremony was like 12 minutes. It wasn't very long, but it was just what I think the village would do in a very class way to honor our veterans. So thank you everyone for attending, and also for Janet Kowal, the one that likes to stay behind and doesn't like to stay in the background. But she deserves a lot of credit for pulling it all together and making that happen. So thank you. Non-residents like to address the board. I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Francis?
Yes.
Trustee Snyder?
Yes.
Trustee Schiappa?
Yes.
Trustee Laveza?
Yes.
Trustee Model?
Yes.
5-0.
Thank you for joining us. The meeting is officially adjourned. Have a blessed evening.